Yeah, they'll all start coming in now.
Right, okay.
Hello. Hello.
Good stuff, good stuff. People coming in, that's good to see.
Hi, it's Jer from Basic. I've just joined.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Ian. Good morning, Dave.
Morning.
Morning.
All right, I'm just waiting for everybody to get in. I'm connecting up. Get all these little messages saying people are connecting to audio as they slowly come into the room.
Yeah. I've connected by audio, Dave. Would you prefer video? It's just that I've got sun behind me, so I don't want to glare.
Audio's fine. That's absolutely fine.
Okay.
Morning, Dave. Malcolm here. Audio okay with
Morning,
me?
Malcolm.
Audio only for me. Is that okay?
That's absolutely fine. Yeah, absolutely fine. I mean, most of you will be aware when you're in one of these sort of things, you don't see everybody's camera anyway. You only see, maybe 3 or 4 of them. So it's up to you. As long as you can see us, that's the main thing.
Great.
Okay.
I'll put on mine on mute for the time being, so I don't get any background. You don't
Okay.
get any background noise. Okay,
right. Wow, I'm showing 27 participants at the moment, so that's good to see. And how are we doing for time? Right, a minute over, so I suggest we make a start then, shall we? Okay, good morning everyone, and a very warm welcome to this webinar presented on behalf of SBSC and exploring the benefits of certification in a post-COVID construction landscape. This first event then will concentrate on certification of construction, and we'll run subsequent events looking at certification of design. Before I get into the introductions, just a few housekeeping messages. If you haven't already done so, can you all please mute yourself? And if you're familiar with Zoom, as with most other platforms, you can mute yourself by clicking or tapping the microphone symbol at the bottom of the screen. There will be an opportunity to ask questions as we go, and you can do this through the chat facility, again at the bottom of the screen. This will log all the questions and we'll answer them as best as we can at the end of the webinar. Finally, I just want to point out that we are recording this webinar, so if you miss anything, we'll be making the recording available to watch back online. So don't panic if you do miss anything. Right, housekeeping done. Let's get on with introducing you to today's panel. We're fortunate to have with us today Dr. Stephen Garvin. Stephen joined the Scottish Government as Head of Building Standards Division in January 2018 from the Building Research Establishment, and he brings a wealth of technical expertise and industry networks. He has a long-standing involvement in certification under the Building Standard Scheme, having set up the Energy Design Scheme for Section 6 compliance. We also have with us Leslie Fox. Leslie joined SNPF in 1990 and is Schemes Manager dealing with the day-to-day running of the approved certifier scheme. As for myself, I joined Select in 2009 and I'm Director of Technical Services as well as the Head of Certification for the Select Electrical Scheme. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get someone from the client side of certification to join us today to speak, but this is the first and what we hope will be a series of such webinars. So we hope to get someone to speak on behalf of clients at a future event. Okay then, without further ado, I'll hand you over to our first speaker today, which is Stephen Garvin of BSD. Over to you, Stephen.
Okay, morning Dave, and morning everyone. Hopefully I'm coming through loud and clear. Thank you. As Dave said, I've joined Scottish Government around about 2.5 years ago or so as Head of Building Standards. I had quite a long involvement with certification prior to that, and was responsible for setting up an energy certification scheme at BRE under the Building Scotland Act prior to that, as well as one or two other things in my BRE days. We felt it was important to engage with certification, which was part of the set up as part of the 2003 Act at that time, really to support a number of things, but particularly around competence and allowing people who were competent to be able to demonstrate compliance with building regulations, with building standards, and to be able to take that specific element. And energy was a good fit for BRE at the time. There is obviously the RIAS scheme as well, and that scheme is going on, and both those scheme providers still in place. So just to let you know, I've been involved in this for quite some time. I think one of the things that we've seen in recent months is as COVID has affected us all, is really a kind of a much greater collaboration and working together between government and industry and local authorities. So that's come through in various ways. I'm Select been very much involved in things like the CICV forum, but there's a construction leadership forum that's chaired by Minister Kevin Stewart, and that has worked with industry quite intensively around development, safe operating procedures, and really to help industry get back to work again. And we've made substantial progress over a number of months there, enabling things to open up again. So I think through that, we've also had a much greater engagement and conversation between Scottish Government and the certification scheme providers as well, which has been a healthy thing and something that we really want to keep going as an opportunity, and also as a legacy of the past few months. So I'd ask Dave maybe to pass on to the next slide, please. Okay, thanks. So Scottish Building Standards System, it's based on the Building Scotland Act 2003, as I'm sure everyone's well aware. The regulations and technical guidance are designed to ensure buildings are safe, efficient and sustainable. And of course, building standards or building regulations are a fully devolved matter, so they're the responsibility of the Scottish Parliament. And even with changes around EU exit and internal market legislation, etc., that situation is not going to change as a result of that. So we have a system which is currently delivered by 32 local authorities. They're appointed as verifiers for building warrants through to completion certificates by Scottish ministers. And those verifiers are supported by the certification options that exist. And again, certification is what we define within the Act and enable through regulation and guidance. The legislation that we have in place is preemptive, so you need approval before starting work. You need your building warrant to be in place before you can begin to cut into the ground, so to speak. And it's noticeable that the Building Safety Bill in England has taken this approach for higher risk buildings now. So the new regulator that's been set up there and the new system around higher risk buildings is a preemptive one. But of course, our system is preemptive for everything that requires a warrant. So you must have the warrant before starting work. Local authorities are responsible for checking and approving designs and for carrying out checks during the course of construction work, and ultimately for accepting or not a completion certificate. But certification is very much used as part of the system. It's there to be as an option at both design and construction stages. It relies on parties coming forward to propose certification schemes and to act as scheme providers. And we have advantages there. There are discounts available both at design and construction stages. So those levels of that discount on the warrant fee varies a little bit, but as long as that's declared up front, then there is some cost saving for applicants. But there's also something about the speed as well. So going down the route of certification, should the verifier just needs to check that the certifier is bona fide and on the register and approved at that date and time. We also have COVID advantages, and I think particularly during the construction stages. If a verifier, local authority verifier, doesn't need to go out and check a particular aspect of the work, and that's been done by a certifier who is part of the construction team anyway, then it saves a trip to site. And whilst that must just be one trip, which in itself may have limited risk of transmission of a virus, if we scale that up across Scotland, that could be quite substantial. Now, the exact saving on that is difficult to quantify, but there are certainly benefits there for using the existing schemes. And as it says, ultimately the local authority still has responsibility for the completion certificate, but the certificates of design, certificates of construction are evidence that are used. They have a legal standing underneath the Act as evidence of compliance. Okay, next slide, please, Dave. I suppose just dealing with some of the issues that are around, we see certification as having a positive future. It's been in place since the Act was implemented in 2005 and will continue to be part of the building standard system landscape in Scotland. We're also asked on a regular basis why certification is optional. And the short answer is the responsibility ultimately for building standards rests with the verifier. And the 32 local authorities are those who are currently appointed in that verification role. Local authorities also have the enforcement role as well. But certification was introduced to introduce a degree of flexibility into the system as to how applicants took their warrant forward and indeed their work on site. So the Act introduces that possibility to use certification schemes and certifiers where they exist. And really what we're looking for is a successful partnership there. So particularly in areas where the capacity and capability isn't quite as great within the local authority teams, it really plays into the introducing capacity and capability into the system. And we note that the SER scheme for structural design was, I think, first to this particular market in 2006. It built on forms of structural certification that existed before under the old regime. But certification of structural design has certainly become much more the norm than going through the local authority sign off and check. And we'd hope that other schemes would develop in that vein as well. But more importantly, it's probably about the value for the applicants and value for those undertaking verification as well. And there has to be, so some schemes will never attain the same level of volume of certificates as others, but it's about the value overall that I think we have to think about. We haven't forgotten about things like the Edinburgh Schools Inquiry and Grenfell. In fact, there are things that in government and particularly in Building Standards Division we live with and we are taking action on a day-to-day basis. John Cole's report into the Edinburgh Schools and his subsequent work for Scottish Government on compliance and enforcement review was very supportive of certification of design and construction, and really kind of was calling for more certification, particularly for safety critical elements of construction work. And that's something that we've been taking forward through research over the past year. We're developing a certification strategy, and we'll hope to be able to roll that out in the coming months and years. Again, the current situation and working from home doesn't help us to advance these things greatly and quickly, but they are things that we're working on. As well as a certification strategy, that forms a strand, a work stream of what we call our Futures Board. And that's very much driven around things like competence. So there's a building standards workforce strategy within it. There is a compliance plan, and that ultimately will lead to new roles and responsibilities. And again, certification will play into that compliance plan as well. Again, these are things that are developing and we expect to be rolling out in the not too distant future. Just finish off really on a couple of things. Certification in new technology. Again, we have moved substantially in the past few months, particularly with verification. So undertaking remote verification inspection and introducing that as an option, as well as using alternative evidence, even at completion stage, to I suppose, demonstrate improved compliance. And that's something that we really want to build on. We see it happening elsewhere in the world. We're very much networked around other countries in Europe and further afield, and we've been working with colleagues in the US on this. So what they call our code officials are quite substantially moving towards remote inspection opportunities. It's a much bigger country than we have in Scotland, and as a verifier over there, you could be driving for 200 miles just to get to a single inspection of an electrical or a plumbing installation, and then you've got to go home again. So remote verification inspection really playing into efficiency there, but benefits for clients, benefits for contractors, benefits for those undertaking the approvals there. And we're seeing that in Scotland as well, where in parts of the country you could be driving for hours to reach a site. But it's about adding value. It's not about replacing boots on the ground in its entirety, that's for sure. But we see a role for new technology within certification as well, particularly perhaps certification of construction work. And that's something that we want to work with scheme providers on, understand a bit more of the potential there. I think just to finish off, and I know that I'm going on a bit here, but I think importantly, just to re-emphasise that building standards and certification are very much, they're part of that family of the building standards system and the landscape. It's about capacity and capability, but there's also competence playing in there, and we'll see a lot more on this in the coming months. I don't want to say too much about it, but I'm sure people have got an eye on the Grenfell inquiry in the past few weeks with contractors, subcontractors. So competence is really going to play a big part in how that's defined and viewed, and certifiers are certainly able to demonstrate competence in those areas, and they need to keep doing that on a regular basis, closely kept in check and in line by their scheme providers. And as well, the whole building standard system is also about delivering wider priorities for government as well. So climate change, energy efficiency, and we'll see movement within the new build energy standards next year and in 2024 some substantial changes coming along. And certifiers will be part of that delivery, as well as verifiers, and as well as those who are designing and delivering buildings. Fire safety, of course, is always going to be up there. It's going to be a key priority going forward. And again, we could see that certification having a role in that in the future as well. Okay, Dave, thanks for that. I'm sure I felt as if I was going on a bit longer than my 5 minutes, but hopefully that was of use. Thank you. You're back on.
He's not.
I think Ian needs to unmute you.
I think you're still on mute. That's you.
Okay, right. Thank you, Ian. the silent controller sitting in the background there, just making sure everyone's muted. So that's me back in the room again. Stephen, thanks very much for setting the scene there. I mean, some of the key aspects that came out of that for me, you know, this idea of collaboration. You know, none of us are doing this in isolation, and there's that constant idea of collaboration between Building Standards Division, local authority verifiers, scheme providers, construction companies, the house builders, you know, even down to the level of individual companies. And hopefully you will see that thread running through all of the presentations that you're going to hear about this morning. The other big one for me, I think, is competence. You know, it's really come to the fore now following both the Edinburgh Schools inquiry and the Grenfell inquiry. Competence is making the headlines at the moment, and it's absolutely one of the things that is integral to this system of certification, and you'll hear more about that from the next couple of speakers as well. And the use of new technology. You know, we are living in exciting times at the moment with technology. You know, there's you only got to look at the way we're doing this at the moment, given the current scenario. So, Callum, I see you've got your hand up. If you've got a question, can you get to the Q&A?
Yeah, I'll put it in that then.
The chat function, yeah. If you could just put it in there, and we'll come to questions at the end. Okay.
Right, no worries. That's smashing. Thanks, Dave.
Okay, thanks, Callum. Thanks. Okay, I'd now like to hand over to Leslie Fox of SNPF to tell us about the SNPF scheme and how using an approved certifier under that scheme can be of benefit. So, over to you, Leslie, if I can just get this slide to change. There you go.
Thank you, Dave. Well, good morning. And as Dave says, I will be just explaining how certification works and the benefits of using a certifier. Next slide, Dave. Thank you. Okay, so about the scheme. So SNPF is one of the 6 approved certifier schemes which has been approved by Scottish Government. SNPF, Select and CertSure are all approved to run the approved certifier of construction scheme, and the BRE, SCR and the RIAS are all approved to run the approved certifier of design scheme. So the schemes, in accordance with the Building Scotland Act 2003, which permits the construction of building work, which is subject to building warrant, is good to be, it allows qualified individuals to carry out work without the need for an inspection by local building control officers. The certificates signed by the approved certifiers show that the work certified complies with the Building Scotland regulations. Next slide, please, Dave. So all approved schemes share a website called the Scottish Building Standards Certification, which is referred to as the SBSC website. It details how the various schemes work, how to become a member, and the benefits of using an approved certifier. The SBSC also has its own logo, which has just recently been designed, and you can see it on the top of the slide there. Okay, and next slide, please. So when does SNPF join the approved certified construction scheme? SBSC was approved to run the scheme for drainage, heating and plumbing in 2009. It currently has 300 approved bodies, 200 approved bodies and 300 approved certifiers. The certifiers can certify categories of work which is subject to a building warrant, and clients can receive a discount which is calculated on the estimated value of the work. Next slide, please. Categories of work include above and below ground drainage, gas, oil, solid fuel installations, and renewables. The most popular category, I would say, is the above and below ground drainage. And on average, certifiers collectively issue between 600 and 800 certificates per month, which is quite a lot. Although with that said, the numbers dropped drastically in April. After the lockdown, we saw only 23 certificates being generated that month. So, however, by the time the construction industry got to phase 3 of the Scottish Government's Restart Plan in June, the numbers steadily increased, and we are currently exceeding the numbers generated this time last year. And it's probably because of the backlog. I think all the certifiers are trying to catch up. Long may it continue. Next slide, please. Right, okay, so the promotion of the scheme. SBSC, together with other scheme providers, we meet up with Building Standards Division on a regular basis to discuss how to promote the schemes and to discuss any issues that we may have with certification. So in June, Kevin Stewart, the Scottish Minister for Local Government, Housing and Planning, wrote to all the local authorities to highlight the potential of certification. The scheme providers also released an animation in July, which you'll see later, and this highlights the benefits of using an approved certifier, which shows how health and safety could be improved with less bodies being on site, how it can improve productivity as there'll be less delays due to the certifier being on site, and how it can give assurance that the work carried out is done so by a qualified individual. Next slide, please. So what are the benefits of using an approved certifier? Well, firstly, the scheme is backed by the Scottish Government. Secondly, the approved certifiers are qualified for the categories of work they certify, which means that you can be assured that the work being carried out is by a qualified individual. Thirdly, the certificate of construction removes the need for a local authority building control officer to inspect any work carried out under certification, thus speeding up the project. With the certifier carrying out and certifying the work, this reduces the number of individuals on site at any one time. And finally, clients will pay a reduced building warrant fee if they advise the local authority that they are using an approved certifier. Next slide, please. So what is the criteria to become an approved certifier, which is quite important. So to become a member of the scheme, there needs to be an approved certifier, approved body, and a coordinator. And if it's an individual person, if it's a self-employed person, one-man band, and they can be all three. So firms applying to become approved bodies have to meet a strict criteria, which includes SBSC checking that they have the appropriate insurances, like the public liability insurance and appropriate employers liability insurance. And we've also got to check that the individuals are qualified. In addition to this, the approved certifier must be at an advanced level. Now, what I mean by advanced level is that a plumber goes through a 4-year apprenticeship, and then he becomes a plumber. And then after 2 years of being a plumber, he can apply to the Scottish Northern Line Joint Industry Board to become an advanced plumber. So that's what he has to be. He can't be a plumber. He's got to be at least an advanced plumber or a technician plumber. The certifier also has to hold a water ballast qualification, and they've got to undertake a building standards training course. The building standards training course will be online shortly. The refresher course, which they have to do every 3 years, is currently online, so that's a big help. Approved certifiers must also have the appropriate qualifications for each of the categories they wish to certify. So it might be gas, it might be above below ground drainage, oil, but they have to prove to us that they have the actual current qualifications in order to certify that particular category. Next slide, please. So what happens once a firm has been approved? So SNPIF will add the approved certifier and the approved body details to the Building Standards Division Certification Register. And this is the register that building control officers use to ensure that the approved body and the approved certifier are current. Clients and customers can also use the site to find approved certifiers if they're looking for someone. At the same time, what SNPIF does is they'll provide login details to the actual approved body, and this will allow them to complete the certificates. Once the certificate's been completed online, they can print it off, and both the certifier and the coordinator both sign the certificate, and then that can be handed to the client or to the local authority. Next slide, please. Thank you. So how do clients or customers obtain information on oh, no, I think I've skipped one, have I? No, that's fine, sorry, yeah. How do clients or customers obtain information on approved certifiers? So the building warrant itself asks if you intend to use a certifier of construction. And you can see it online, it actually directs you to the actual register so you can choose somebody. And if the client at the time is not sure whether they're going to use a certifier, because they don't always know, they can fill in a Model L form, which is the notice of intention to use an approved certifier if they don't know at the time. The Model L form can be obtained through the certifier himself, or it can be obtained through e-Building Standards portal or through the BSD's website. If you download the customer journey guide, that tells you. But what you must ensure is that you let the local authorities know that you are using a certifier. Next slide, please. Do SNPIF audit their approved bodies? Yes, SNPIF has to audit their approved bodies every 3 years, and in turn, SNPIF is also audited by the Building Standards Division, and we're currently going through a reappointment process, and we'll let you know the outcome of that soon. Next slide, please. Thank you. And these are just, it's just an example of some of the home builders that are using certifiers at the moment. So this is just from one of our members when I phoned him up and I said, we don't really know who your clients are. We know that you're using certifiers, but we don't know who your clients are. So he gave me this list. And he actually said that 75% of his work involves certification, which is reassuring. Next slide, please. So where can you find information on certification? So you can find it through the Scottish Building Standards Certification website, and that gives you details on all the scheme providers of construction and design. It gives you links to all their websites, or you can visit the Building Standards Certification Register, www.certificationregister.co.uk, or you can visit the SNPIF website on www.snpif.org, and that gives you the same information. And that ends my presentation. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Leslie. Yeah, a lot of information there, you know, and I think I was saying before we came on live here, I think one of the real beauties of doing presentations in this sort of format is because we're recording it, you have the ability to go back and look over these slides again, you know, where you can see all the information clearly printed out, and you can see all the links for where you can go to get additional information. So thanks very much, Leslie. Yeah, I can see there's a few questions coming in. So as I mentioned, we'll get to the questions at the end of all the speakers. And I hope following Leslie's presentation there, you're now starting to get a feel for how the system of certification under building standards works, and where some of the benefits can be there for your project or your business. So we conclude then with my own presentation on the SELECT scheme and how that fits into the overall building standards system. This is what I'm going to cover. So a brief history, you know, at the risk of going over ground that others have covered. I'll try and keep it as brief as I can. I'll talk a little bit more about some of the promotion of the schemes, a little bit about the approved certifiers under the Select scheme, who they are and how to find them. And then we'll go on to have a wee look at the actual certificate itself if you haven't seen one. And then finally, we'll look at some of the benefits of certification. That includes specific benefits for the current COVID-19 construction landscape. Okay, a simple timeline here then, all the way back to where it started in 2003 with the revised Building Scotland Act. As you work your way along the timeline, you'll see 2005, Select was appointed as one of the first scheme providers for a construction scheme, and from there on the scheme quickly grew to the point where we had over 1,000 approved certifiers issuing over 1,000 certificates of construction every month. And the latter part of this timeline shows that level of collaboration that I was talking about. You know, the work that we've done alongside Local Authority Building Standards Scotland and Building Standards Division and other scheme providers on things like the certification workshop, which was held in 2015, led by the then Minister Neil Mackay, through to the review of warrant fees in 2017, and then ultimately on to the work that we've done throughout the periods of lockdown this year, culminating this year throughout that in the rebranding of SBSC, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go on. So, promotion of the scheme then. It's one of those ongoing and repeating activities, and throughout the past 15 or so years, we've engaged in joint promotional work with many other like-minded organisations that have put the interests of the industry at the forefront of promotion. SBSC, as we mentioned, originally set up by the two electrical scheme providers, so that's Select and Certsure NIC EIC, and then joined by SNPF when their scheme was accepted. Now, however, it's an inclusive one-stop shop representing all scheme providers, all schemes, both construction and design. I mentioned the collaborative work that we've done with labs and BSD, and this is just one example on the production of this comprehensive and interactive customer journey, allowing any user of the building standards system the ability to jump in at any point and see exactly what they need to do in the process. We've also produced technical information on fire safety, for example, and this was one that we issued alongside ACO in 2013 when the regulations on carbon monoxide detectors changed, as well as producing technical guidance for our own approved certifiers. This then is our latest leaflet, distributed widely and bearing the new SBSC logo. But we've also in the past run TV and radio advertising campaigns, promoting certification throughout the whole of Scotland, extending our reach and allowing us to reach all 32 local authorities. Moving on then to the approved certifiers themselves. And you can see from here where their authority is derived. And this is taken straight out of the Select scheme guide. So not only does it show where their authority is derived from, but it also highlights the scope of the scheme and the scope of the work that they can certify. It also details how approved certifiers are expected to conduct themselves in their activities. Not only do they represent themselves and their companies, but they also represent Select and to some degree the reputation of all approved certifiers and scheme providers. Parts of that is recognising the boundaries of their authority. In other words, knowing what they can, and perhaps more importantly, what they cannot certify. There are tight requirements on individual approved certifiers, which I won't go into in detail here, but again, feel free to run back through the recording when it's released and have a look at these in more detail. But suffice it to say that these are individuals who are all at the top of their game in the industry, with relevant industry qualifications and knowledge, as well as many years of experience in the application of that knowledge. And that's an important part of the delivery of a scheme such as this one. And that also includes regular update training in both the requirements of the scheme and in the requirements of building standards itself. We also operate a couple of courses. One's a full one-day course for approved certifiers, and the other is an online half-day-ish course for those renewing within the scheme itself. For those then looking to employ the services of an approved certifier, this is the Scottish Government's certification register. Leslie mentioned it previously. So this is where you can go to find an approved certifier. It's also where local authority verifiers go to check the credentials of an approved certifier when they receive a certificate of construction. And once you've done a search, it's a basic postcode search. This is the sort of table of results that you can expect to receive. So you can pretty much search, again, by postcode, closest to your project, and pick and choose whichever approved certifier you feel might be best for your own particular project. If you haven't seen a certificate of construction, here's what the current version looks like. And those signatures by the approved certifier and coordinator are legally binding statements of the authenticity of a certificate of construction and the work to which it pertains. In terms of timing for the issue of a certificate of construction, it should only be issued once all of the construction work relating to that installation have been completed. Now, it may require the approved certifier to return to the job after other trades have completed their work to ensure that what they have done hasn't affected anything relating to this certificate. And that's an important point to note. Now, there is some additional documentation produced in support of a certificate of construction, such as any electrical certification. This must all be issued to the client, as well as a list of items checked to ensure compliance. However, the company must retain certain aspects of this documentation for auditing purposes. Leslie mentioned the auditing that the schemes undergo, or the approved bodies and approved certifiers undergo, as well as the auditing that scheme providers undergo. So it's important that this documentation is all held for a period of time to enable that auditing process to go smoothly. There can be some confusion over exactly who gets what when a certificate is issued and when. And I mentioned previously the timing for the issue of a certificate of construction at the end of construction work. That would then be issued to the building owner, developer, or agent, who would attach it to their completion certificate and submit it to the local authority. There's no need to include all the additional certificates I mentioned previously, such as the electrical certificate. The certificate of construction contains all the necessary information to demonstrate compliance, and the only checks the local authority verifier needs to undertake are to check that the approved certifier is valid, and again, that's done using the certification register. So having done all of that then, what benefits can you as a building owner, as a developer, an agent, expect from using an approved certifier? Quite an extensive list here, and I won't go through them all, but I just want to highlight a few of them. The work then is covered by additional insurances and comes with the full backing of the scheme provider. So if anything goes wrong, as well as having the company in place to correct things, you can then, in the event that things still don't get fixed, you can come to the scheme provider and we will investigate it and hopefully put things right. Using approved certifiers, as has been mentioned previously, provides greater flexibility on projects. due to their expansive knowledge of both their specialist area, in this case electrical installations, but also the requirements of building standards as they apply to your project. And in terms of financial benefits to your projects, there are discounts to warrant fees for using an approved certifier. Here you can see the range of discounts following the review that happened back in 2017. Should be noted, however, that these discounts may be repayable if you declare the use of an approved certifier on your warrant application, but fail to submit a certificate of construction. Okay, let's have a look at some specific COVID-19 benefits then. And these have been touched on a little bit by the previous speakers. So increased safety. Having approved certifiers on site reduces the number of people that you have on site, lowering the risk and keeping the public safe. Increased productivity. Not having to wait for an inspector to turn up means fewer delays and hold-ups. And finally, increased peace of mind. Approved certifiers are committed to following best practice and upholding the highest building standards with the backing of their scheme provider. Where can you go then for some further information? Well, you can see there's a whole raft of documents freely available to download from the BSD website. You've got the customer journey front and centre there, as well as a number of other technical handbooks and supporting guidance that goes alongside that. Okay, let me finish then, if this will work, by just showing. This was an animation that the joint scheme providers produced under the brand SBSC. It was produced and published, released back in July, I believe it was, across social media as a means of, again, promoting certification. So, and that's a list of all the construction and design schemes that were involved in the production of this animation. Apologies for the little glitch there halfway through that. That's what happens when you click on your screen to look at something else when there's a video running. Okay, that brings us then to the end of the formal presentations from speakers. And we now move open onto the question and answer session. Now I can see I've pulled up the chat here, so there are a few questions. I'll just work my way through them one by one. So I'll read out who the question is from. I'll read out who the question is directed at, if it is directed at someone specific, and then we'll give that person the opportunity to answer the question and then allow the person asking it the opportunity to come back. So first question then for Stephen Garvin. and this is from Jaya, Stephen. So this is, he asks, what steps are Scottish Government BSD taking to continue the performance requirements of EU construction products regulation, in particular for fire performance?
Okay, thanks, Dave. Thanks, Jeff, for the question. It's not, strictly speaking, a certification, design and construction issue, but we do currently refer to EU construction products regulations, of course, within the building standards and the technical guidance. Clearly, as we move up to the 31st of December, at some point we'll get a better indication of whether a deal is in place that allows a CPR to continue in some shape or form, or if we move to UK regulations. Either way, I suppose it's important to state that construction products as such are a reserved matter, so they're regulated at a UK level and not just Scottish Government. However, we will be working with colleagues in MHCLG and Welsh Government Northern Ireland around this topic and making appropriate updates to our guidance in this area. So what we want to make sure that that transition is as well managed as possible, and we do it on a timely basis. I think it's also important to perhaps mention the new construction products regulator being set up as part of the Building Safety Bill. That is a UK-wide coverage, so it's not just England in that respect. And again, that's something that we need to take account of within regulations and the guidance that we have. But we would see, as long as the regimes are as thorough and certainly the new regulator role leads to a more robust system for construction products, that ultimately it should be beneficial. But we need to see the detail on the role of that regulator and how things will work.
Okay, thanks, Stephen. Jaya, does that answer your question?
No, that does actually, Dave. Thank you very much, and Stephen. I think, you know, just I know there's lots of uncertainty with Brexit pending, and the work of the UK conformity assessment, this new UKCA mark that is potentially going to be a requirement come the 1st of January. So I think it's just understanding if the Scottish Government were taking any additional steps in addition to what the UK at a UK level is taking. But no, I answered the question. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Jai, I see you've asked another question towards the end. We'll come back to that one if I may, because I'd just like to go now to Callum Bunce. Callum has a couple of questions that he'd like to ask on construction certification with regards to remote verification inspections. Yeah,
thanks for the time. It's more a practical observation in relation to the actual remote verification. My experience, I work with Barratt West Scotland, and our experience at the moment is we've got one council who are using it, and the remainder of the councils that we're building in just now are actually now coming out onto site to do their inspections themselves, because they recognise there are some practical issues with the remote verification. In the main, what we have is the council that's using remote verification are asking our guys to go into the loft space. So for instance, if we have a detached property, there's probably less need to go into the loft space other than just opening the hatch and showing that the insulation is in there to the depth that is required. There's more instances where we've got a semi-detached or a terrace property that might need the party wall to be inspected. But that inspection's very difficult to do while you're holding your phone or a camera in your hand and getting into the loft space and trying to navigate across that. So it kind of makes that level of inspection a little bit less safe for for instance, our site manager or assistant site manager who's doing this, at the same time as trying to satisfy the remote verification requirements. It's a practical issue, and it's how to get around that in a manner that's going to satisfy both the safety and the parameters of the verification itself. Is that something that's being considered, or can we deal with that under the construction certification scheme? Would that assist in that?
So I think I can try to answer that, Callum. And it's good to get that feedback. I think it's important to note that this is something that we've introduced that is very much kind of optional is probably not the right term for it, but it was there to help in that time and space. We recognise that some local authorities are obviously probably engaging with it and supporting it more than others. I know that some are very driven to kind of introduce this in a more permanent way. There is still, and there always will be, a role for verifiers to go to site and to carry out inspection, and that should be very much around a kind of risk-based approach there to what it is it's being inspected, the nature of the building, and other matters. What we are doing to take this forward is we have a wider programme of work around, I referred to earlier, the Futures Board. The digital transformation work stream within that is a collection of kind of digital developments that we're looking at. Local Authority Building Standards Scotland Labs have set up a digital task force. So we're working with them. We're trying to bring in developers to get involved in I suppose I'll call it a kind of extended pilot or trial around this. So if you're interested in that, I'll be happy to see if we can get you engaged in that, Callum. And that would look at the sort of technologies that are available. It would kind of try to develop further guidance, perhaps training, and you know, you've pointed out a very good issue there around just the safety of doing these things and what you're inspecting and have to do that.
Yeah,
so, yeah,
I think it's quite a practical issue, but there's possibly one solution. We have building control officers who still want to come on site to inspect the property, and I think that's commendable on their part, and it's also good from Barrett's point of view, because we have spent a lot of time and money making sure that our COVID measures on site at the moment are in place and allow the safe inspection of a property by a building control inspection officer, or anyone else that needs to come on and build or inspect. We have very good methods and processes in place. One thing that we do have is there's a Scottish Water scheme which allows you to tag a photograph of the water pipe, which gives it a sort of geographic location specific to the plot. And for elements that would be unsafe to inspect, for instance climbing into a loft space, it might be worthwhile looking at developing a similar type scheme that allows, say for instance our site agent, to go into the loft space, take a photograph of the relevant parts if there's a part of wall requirement, and there the insulation, that can then be geotagged in the exact same way that the Scottish Water's pipework is photographed, and then it moves from there to being specific to that plot, and it would tie in then with your digital systems that can associate the photograph with the plot, so that it doesn't feel like, you know, we've got a bank of photographs in there and we've got somebody just copying out a photograph and pasting it to an application. It is actually geotagged to the plot itself. So I think that would help.
Okay, thanks for that, Callum. I think we're aware of the Scottish Water scheme and something we're having a look at, but I think probably need to get back to have a further conversation about these things.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. Thanks, Callum. I think it's probably also worth pointing out verification is one side of this this equation here. There is obviously the certification side, which we're concentrating on today, and I know that there are still large parts of construction itself which are not covered by certification schemes, and I know some of that is being looked at. But I think the key point that we're trying to get across in terms of certification is, one of the benefits of using an approved certifier on those aspects that can be certified is there is no requirement then to have any additional inspection done afterwards. But I do take on board, Callum, your comments, and in my own discussions with local authority verifiers, yet many of them are still keen to get out there and get eyes on those aspects that they feel is their responsibility to look after. So thanks both. Not so much a question, but we're joined today by Stuart Thompson. Stuart works for CertSure NIC EIC, and they deliver an electrical scheme in much the same way as selectors. Stuart, are you there? Are you?
Hold on, I'm here.
Excellent. Stuart, you just wanted to make a comment about some of the work that we've been doing to streamline the process in terms of the certificate itself. I mean, I'm quite happy to cover it, but I'm conscious I've done a lot of talking. I don't know if you want to say a little bit about that.
Hello. Sure. It's just alluding to the fact that we're always looking for ways to make the system as user-friendly as possible for all the certifiers of construction and the whole system generally. So just a piece of work that's been going on behind in the background to make people aware of that. We're looking at ways of trying to streamline the certificates that would be used. So there's some ideas there. We've developed some templates. It's not finished, but it's well on the way. And it's just really to communicate that constantly looking at the scheme. It's a living scheme, it's a breathing scheme. It's not set in aspect, and we're trying to make it as user friendly for all the people in the chain. So I don't think you can say any more on that, but really hopefully that communicates of the work that's going on behind the scenes between us all.
Cool. Thanks, Stuart. Yeah, and again, it's worthwhile pointing out that that's not a piece of work that myself and Stuart and his organisation have done in isolation. This has been done in collaboration with BSD and with labs as well. And all really to kind of try and this idea of continuous improvement within the operation of the schemes themselves. So always looking to provide additional benefits and additional improvements to the schemes themselves. So there'll be more to come on that in due course. Looks like the final question that we've got then again, and this is coming back to Jaya. I said you had another question, and the question this time is, how does an approved certifier evidence that an electrical installation has used approved cable products that are compliant with regulation? Now I'm conscious as well on this event that I've got some of my own technical team sitting in as well. So if any of you guys feel that you want to chip in and add to this, please feel free to do so. I mean, I can say a few things on this in terms of the requirements for not just approved certifiers but qualified electricians in the main to ensure that they use approved cables, cables that carry all the relevant markings, cables that are sourced from reputable organizations as well, not just bought from eBay or other online sellers, but and we've done a number of surveys around our membership on where they're sourcing their cable from, and we've shared those results previously. And by and large, the majority of electrical contracting firms are buying their cable from reputable sources, and that cable comes with all the basic markings on it as well. And I sit on the basic certification committee, albeit the committee hasn't met for quite a while, so I'm aware of all those requirements. And indeed, we've done some work previously with the Approved Cables Initiative to, just to promote this idea about the importance of using approved cables for your installation, and some of the examples of cabling that's come into the country, it's either been counterfeit or non-compliant. So in terms of electricians or approved certifiers, there are aspects within the certification when they sign it to say that they have complied with all the relevant requirements and all the relevant regulations. If I can, let me try and get back to the slide that showed the certificate itself, because on there, I just want to highlight, all right, there we go, okay. So this is, I mentioned previously, this is the certificate in its current form, and this is part of the work that we're doing at the moment, is to revise the certificate itself. So you'll see on there, there are various parts to it, a bit about the warrant number, the verifier, and the certificate number itself. And that certificate number is a unique number given to that certificate. And then in part A, this is all about the project itself. And you'll see there at paragraph 4 of part A, nature of the work and supporting documents used to check compliance. So if it's an electrical installation, then you would expect there to be a supporting electrical installation certificate. And you can see in this example, the approved certifier has ticked the box to say, yes, the nature of work was low voltage electrical installation work. They completed the scheme checklist and they have issued BS certification to the person ordering the work. And within that BS certification then is all the signatures for the design, for the installation, for the inspection and testing. And all of that ensures or demonstrates compliance with any regulations, such as the standard of cables that are being installed. So yeah, that's all fully documented and all accounted for within the certification itself. Jai, does that answer your question? Any follow-up on that at all?
No, that's really helpful, Dave. I think that audit trail I wasn't aware of, so I thank you for that. That's a really good sort of explanation of how you can evidence the compliance using approved cables. Again, just a bit of back. Obviously, we're from BASIC, who are a third-party cables approvals body. But there are others like LPCB, and I think making sure that cables, because it is quite a complex market and lots of substandard cables are coming into the market that don't have the necessary quality marks, and the industry need to be aware of that, and just make sure that obviously they're using good quality cables that have been tested and approved. Thank you.
Good. Okay. Thanks very much. Yeah, it's another important message to get out. And as I said, we've done some work previously with the Approved Cables Initiative on promoting those messages, and we'll continue to do so. Okay, that's it for the questions. I don't see anything else coming in. I don't see anyone else jumping up and down wanting to ask a question. So I think if we can wrap it up there for today, it really just leaves me to thank our speakers. Stephen Garvin from BSD, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate you taking the time out to join us here today. Leslie Fox of SNPF, thanks very much, Leslie. Again, appreciate your time. We're all very busy at the moment, so it's nice to be able to take a bit of time out and do this sort of thing for this audience. Final thanks then to the audience. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. As I mentioned, this webinar has been recorded, so we'll get the link to that out as soon as we can afterwards, and you can go back and review and have a look in a bit more detail at some of the information on the slides. But for now, thanks very much again, and we hope to be able to bring you the second in this series of webinars concentrating more on certification of design in the near future, but we'll let you all know when that's going to happen. So I bid you all farewell, enjoy the rest of your day, whatever it brings, and we'll see you all again sometime soon. Thank you very much.
Goodbye.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.